My name is Stephen Hu. I'm one of the co-founders of the Taraxa project, and welcome to our monthly development progress update for the month of June 2024. As a logistical reminder, as usual, we typically hold our monthly progress updates during the second Thursday of each month. This month, we're doing it 1 month early due to some scheduling conflicts. But typically, we do it every second Thursday of each month. So please mark your calendars. All of the progress updates, things that have happened during the project, are typically covered in our monthly update. So if you want a well-written record, it's typically published actually before the monthly progress update spaces. So please check that out. Follow our Twitter account to see a written record prior to the spaces even being published. And then if you want questions to be asked if you want your questions to be answered during this monthly progress update, please submit your questions ahead of time through our social channels, Telegram, Twitter, Discord, whatever you like. Okay, great. So let's moving to some of the update highlights. So the first thing I'm sure everyone wants to know is Bridge and DeFi. So everything is moving forward according to plan on that front with the Bridge and with all of our DeFi ecosystem partnerships. So the Bridge was deployed last week on time into the testnet by the end of June. So we're conducting a lot of tests right now to make sure that it is working properly on the testnet. So the tests involve not just the bridge itself, but also quite a few of the infrastructure updates, such as pillar blocks that we've actually added into our layer one. So all of that is being stress tested on the testnet right now. So anyway, we're very happy about being able to make that deadline. And yeah, and also next week, the final audit on the bridge will take place during the week of July 8th. We don't anticipate any major issues because this is kind of a more in-depth audit of what we did last time, right? It's a follow-up audit, so we want to make triple sure, quadruple sure that there is nothing wrong or no security issues, but we don't anticipate any problems. So our audit is done with Trail Bits, and I think we were very happy with their the first audit. I think we're going to be pretty happy with the second one as well. In terms of the DeFi ecosystem, we have Fusi app, which is a DEX, as well as a Launchpad, which is something that I think most community members are asking for. A DEX and a Launchpad that will launch very, very soon. We're working with them to make sure that the launch goes well. With regards to Oracle, we've actually already built price reporters that actually integrate with on-chain teller contracts that was deployed on our testnet a while ago. So that's all working correctly. In order for the teller Oracle to fully work, we have to wait till the bridge is deployed so that we can actually bridge over some TRB tokens to stake these reporters. So we're in close contact with the teller team, and there might be things coming up, with collaboration with the teller beyond just price oracles. I think there could be something very interesting happening with Echo and the AI agents that are built on top of Echo to create AI oracles. I think those are going to be very, very interesting. Meridian, it's a synthetic stablecoin I mentioned before. We've done many rounds of discussion with them and deep dive into how to ensure that the stablecoin remains stable, and it requires a price oracle. So we'll need to wait till Teller is up and going before Meridian can be really set up. Obviously, because for stable, it's a collateralized debt model, so it requires a price oracle to enforce liquidations. And TerraSwap is still ongoing. It's adding a few more features. So I've already seen people, I think, actually in the community interested in TerraSwap, and I think we put them in touch with the team. Liquid staking, Lara. So Lara is largely ready as far as I know, and the only thing that's really holding it back is the fact that we need a on-chain TPOS contract update. And so that's probably going to happen after the bridge has been deployed on the mainnet, because right now the entire team is basically 200% focused on the bridge right now. So after the bridge is deployed, so this on-chain DPoS contract update will probably take place maybe late August, early September. So we'll see. Well, we'll see how that goes. We're trying to push everything forward, but we've been building a lot of new things, so we want to be, again, very careful and very methodical about the things that we push onto mainnet. We want to make sure that they're all as stable and as secure as possible. Okay, so yeah, we hope Lara can launch as soon as possible. So the Ledger team is going to work very hard to support that. Okay. Ecosystem update. So we're very fortunate to have a partnership with Omniscia Security. So they have offered Taraxa ecosystem projects discounts as well as a streamlined onboarding process to all Taraxa ecosystem projects. So this is really great. If you're building on top of Taraxa and you're looking for auditing services, please check out Omniscia. This is a really good deal and partnership to take advantage of for all your auditing service needs. Okay, so I want to take a moment here to reiterate some of the design and features of the bridge. Okay, so this is something I think we have covered quite extensively over our social accounts, trying to emphasize, especially the fact that the bridge is permissionless. And this is very, very important. To understand why this is so important, I think we probably go back in history a little bit. So while we were building or finalizing the layer one, Terraza layer one for mainnet launch back in 2022, um, we started looking to bridges because obviously by that time, after the DeFi explosion really in 2020 and 2021, it was very clear to us that a bridge is not really an optional feature of any layer one ecosystem. It's a required feature. So at that time, there were, and still today, I think the same set of bridges were dominating the market. These large scale, actively validated bridges. So we reached out to these bridges. We even got, kind of inside referrals into their dev team. We did our due diligence on a lot of these bridges because obviously we didn't want to work with a bridge that wasn't secure and wasn't worked out by people whom we had referrals. So we not only looked into their tech, but we also looked into their team, right, to make sure that these bridges are the bridges that we would want to work to. But the thing that really surprised us is that every single one of these large bridges that we went to, you had to get the team's permission to use it, right, to get on it. You also had to get the node's permission to use it, and and also you have to meet monthly and annual transaction volume targets and quotas in order to keep using it. Right. So if you're not using it and you're not using it enough, then they basically kick you off the bridge. Right. And this is ridiculous, right? So we're in Web3, we're in crypto. Supposedly, things are supposed to be decentralized and permissionless, but these bridges are some of the most centralized things I've ever seen. You need permission from so many people, and they can kick you off whenever they feel like it. It's absolutely outrageous, right? So at that time, I think we spent months and months talking to all these different bridges, and basically the conversation just went nowhere, right? I mean, they didn't want to integrate. They said it takes a long time to integrate. Blah 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 blah, and so we just said, look, I mean, we need to build our own, right? So we didn't set out to build our own bridge, but after these bridges being completely permissioned and centralized, seeing how every one of them are permission centralizing the market, we said that we just need to build our own because it's a bit ridiculous. And in the vast majority of cases, when layer ones build their own bridge, they just build some multi-sig wallet that takes 2 weeks, and they're like, hey, look how awesome we are. It took us 2 weeks to build a bridge. We're done, right? We're so fast. Um, well, the thing about centralized wallets, right, multi-sig wallets, is that they're always either hacked or rugged, right? Every single one of them. Every single wallet-based bridge multi-sig has been hacked or rugged at some point. I think actually a lot of the hacks, quote unquote hacks, of these multi-sig wallets were actually rugs by the team, right? So we're not going to get into that, obviously. It's just absolutely ridiculous and irresponsible to build a multi-sig wallet and call it a bridge. So we wanted to build something that was different, that was actually truly permissionless, right? So that's why we took the approach that we did to use light clients and do on-chain state verifications. So for Taraxa's bridge, all bridging transactions are verified on-chain in smart contracts, openly and transparently, right? Nobody owns the assets, right? They're not owned by any person. No one can rug it. They're locked in by the contracts with no owners. Okay, so that. These are all very important things. You don't need to ask permission if you want to deploy new assets onto the bridge, right? Just do it. Nobody can say no because that's just the way it works, right? Everything from the bridge contracts to the relayers, even the UI is 100% open source. When a lot of teams build things that they say are open source, they typically just open source a very small portion of it. They close source everything else, right? Everything about the Taraxa bridge is 100% open source. Everything we build at Taraxa is open source, right? You're either open source or you're not, right? So this is something that we built. We're very, very proud of it. It took a lot longer, obviously, than building some stupid multi-sig wallet. And we're very proud of the work that we've done, and we've done it very carefully. We actually would have liked a lot more time to do it, but we're going to be doing, I think, a lot more follow up stress testing after even the bridge is deployed, right? So yeah, so this is why we build our own bridge, and the reasons why we think that having a bridge, a perfectly permissionless bridge, is so important in the larger crypto ecosystem. Because unfortunately, everything, all the new projects, the bigger projects are actually becoming more and more centralized. I think people really want to pursue performance. And one of the easiest way to get performance is to centralize these networks as much as possible. So this is at the infrastructure level. This is actually very worrying to see, because if you're in crypto, if you're in Web3, you ideally this is you want to be decentralized. That's the whole point of being in crypto. But we're seeing increasingly, everything being very very centralized. So anyway, hopefully that we can we're putting a stake in the ground here. We're going to insist on building things that are actually permissionless, that are actually decentralized. And the Taraxa Ficus Root Bridge fits exactly that bill, and we're very proud of what we're doing. And and this is something I think to really would differentiate us from everyone else. It's actually a little sad that we have to say this, and that decentralization has become a feature, not the core of crypto and Web3. We hope that things change, but but it takes projects and communities like ours to really push forward that change and bring the space back to being 100% committed to decentralization. Okay, so let's go into some of the questions. So we do have a lot of questions. So let's see. Let's hope we can cover all of them. The first one is content marketing, right? So in terms of content marketing, the thing that we're trying to improve upon right now is really channel saturation. There are a lot of social channels, right, around the world, obviously, that have things to do with crypto. A lot of social platforms. We are not really covering as many of them as we can. So this is why we're actually trying to recruit people to help us achieve that coverage. We have an excellent foundation of content that has been built up over the years. We have translated most of that actually into short form social content. We have lots of long form content as well as short form social content. Now we know that obviously in today's world, nobody really reads long form articles anymore. So we're very focused on spreading the short form content across as many platforms as possible. So we are recruiting help to make sure that happens. and you'll see the difference once it does happen. In terms of business development, we are ramping up our business development, and this is something that's being done by the entire team, right? So everyone on the team is pitching in, talking to potential partners, for integration, for partnerships. A layer one requires a lot of different pieces for the ecosystem to really work well. So we are integrating as many of these pieces as we can, pieces that we find to be useful, we think will be useful to other developers, to users in the ecosystem. We're also recruiting more people to come in and help us with these partnerships, and they're going to be primarily focused inside crypto. Okay, so I know there's another question later on talking about partnerships outside of crypto. We'll get to that in a bit. Um, we're targeting and working on substantive partnerships, right? Which means that we want to make sure that the partnership is meaningful. There's actually a win-win happening between the ecosystems, and between the projects, between the products. And that is going to be a sustainable partnership over time. The vast majority of partnerships in Web3 are meaningless, as I'm sure you all know, right? Teams create these fake partnerships with other projects to make an announcement, and that's it. That's all they really do. We're not interested in those types of partnerships. We're interested in partnerships where it's actually a real partnership, right? Again, it's kind of sad that we have to say this. It's going to be a win-win situation in which we can bring something new to the table to them, and they can bring something new to the table for us, and we can both extend our ecosystems and better serve our current and future users, right? So these types of partnerships take time to build, and we're working hard we're working hard on all of them, and we're bringing more resources to make sure that they happen. The rebranding effort, so that's ongoing, and the rebranding itself, I think, has been completed. So we have updated logos, branding guides, lots of new stuff, and we have a preliminary redesign of the website. There's a lot more work to be done there. I think both on the website as well as on upcoming websites for things like Echo, and then a lot more logos for some of these other sites and assets that we currently have. So there's a lot of things going on for the rebranding, and we'll review them once they've been implemented, right? So and all right, so there was a question about running bridge relayers. So this is something that's interesting. So first of all, we go back to what we talked about. This bridge is a perfectly decentralized and permissionless bridge. The relayers is a critical part of the bridge, and because all verifications, right, are done on chain, all the relayers doing, what they're really doing is basically relaying changes it sees on one side and pushes it to the other side. That's all they're really doing, and it's very difficult for a relayer to lie, because if you lie and you're pushing in state changes that are inconsistent with previous changes, then the smart contracts on chain will just reject them, right? So it's hard to even kind of lie if you're a relayer. And the issue with, so first of all, anyone can run a relayer. Okay, if you want to run a relayer, go ahead, go run it. The reason why we think not many people are going to want to run a relayer is because it's not really profitable. The reason why it's not profitable is because there are significant fixed costs associated with bridging state from Taraxa side into Ethereum, right? From Ethereum to Taraxa, nobody cares because all transactions on Taraxa cost basically nothing. So that costs like no money whatsoever. But doing anything on Ethereum costs a lot of money, costs massive amounts of money. There's not much anyone can do about that just because Ethereum is very slow and extremely expensive. So if you're running a relayer, you're gonna have to pay out a lot of ethers, for example, in order for this to work out. And we're just not really sure if there are a lot of people out there that's willing to just sit around and pay a lot of money. Now, bridge transactions obviously are paid by whoever makes those bridging transactions. And again, the fees for those transactions are going to be pretty high. Um, not because not because the relayers are greedy, just because the Ethereum fees are extremely high. Okay, so that's really the reason. We don't know if there's going to be significant amounts of bridging transactions to kind of try to offset all the fixed costs. There needs to be a lot of bridging transactions to offset the fixed costs. So we don't know if there's going to be sort of that many. We think there could be quite a bit from Ethereum to Taraxa, which doesn't really cost much of anything really. But there's there might not be a ton from Taraxa to Ethereum because I don't really see why people would be doing that a lot. And anyway, going back to the original question, anyone can run a relayer, but you might not want to since it's going to cost you money to run it. Um, and the money is all going to paying Ethereum gas fees basically. And so we're going to be monitoring very closely the economics of the bridging contracts once it's been deployed onto the mainnet and people actually start using it for real. And so we'll have better insights into the economics of these relayers. But in the near term, I don't really see other people wanting to run the bridge. I mean, look, if you have like a lot of money to just burn and you don't care and you want to support the project, great. We welcome anyone to run a bridge. Again, it's open source; anyone can run it. But we just don't think people are gonna want it just because it costs a lot of money to run one, and you're not really even making money off of it. So we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully that will change once the bridge starts to gain some traction. There also might be longer term ideas about potentially bridging the Ethereum bridge into an Ethereum layer two. Um, but that's just that's again that's another connection that we have to do later, and the layer twos might be much obviously it could be much cheaper, but then again all these layer twos today are centralized, so I'm not really exactly a huge fan of it. But I can understand why people are starting to use all these centralized um, layer twos because the fees on Ethereum are just so ridiculous. We're not even in the bull market yet, right? And the fees are just crazy. Imagine, a year later or I don't know, 6 months later, we get into a big bull market. The fees are going to 10x. I mean, it's even going to get crazier. So it's yeah. Anyway, we love Ethereum, but it's so expensive. So we're going to be closely monitoring the economics. We're going to figure out optimizations. I think we can actually. We're also going to try to integrate a gas oracle, price oracle, into the bridging contract. Hopefully later on, so that we have better price prediction for how much things are going to cost. Anyway, cool. So roadmaps for the next 12 months, and so the first thing I want to emphasize is that we want to take a very good chunk of time to actually stress test everything that we've built. And we've been building a lot of things, right? We've been building a lot of features, a lot of upgrades, a lot of patches into our layer one, and also into all of our ecosystem infrastructure, right? Things like Explorer, indexers. There's just a lot of things that we've been building a lot of new things. So we would like to take some time to actually take a pause on building new things and just do a lot of stress testing on everything that we've built. We've been moving. We're a very small team, so we've been moving very fast in terms of shipping new features, and we want to take a pause just so that we test everything. Again, for infrastructure, you can never test too much, but as the dev team, we feel like we could do a lot more testing on the things that we've been working on. to really, really double, triple sure that nothing's really going to happen, nothing wrong is going to happen. There's also a long to-do list in terms of performance enhancements, right? So our existing layer one, this is a huge topic, I think, within the team. There are a lot of things that we could do to make sure that the current layer one runs much more quickly, much faster TPS, much lower latency. We also want to, if you read our white paper from, when I wrote it, 5-6 years ago, there's also this concept of fuzzy sharding. It's not real sharding. That's why we call it fuzzy sharding. There's no state sharding, and there's this idea of jurisdiction. So all these things are going to help us enhance the performance of the current layer one. I think there's just a lot of low hanging fruits out here that we could actually pursue to make sure that we just have a lot more, a lot better performance, right? Okay. So we've been talking about this subgraphs. Subgraphs are going to be a pretty huge undertaking. It's a very, very, very big task. We haven't started researching this topic yet, so obviously within the next 12 months we will. We have no idea how long it's going to take because we haven't done the research into scoping out the details and complexity of this feature. So that's something that we're going to be working on, right? So yeah, the focus that for the next after, I mean, next 12 months, I think it's really sort of after the bridge has been deployed. The 12 months after that is going to be, like I said, in summary, right? Lots more stress testing, um, performance enhancements, and research into subgraphs, right? So these are all the things that we're going to be doing from the infrastructure side of things. Okay. So there was a question about parallelized EVM, right? So there are other projects out there in the market that have raised a lot of money to do parallelized EVM. I mean, there are always projects out there raising a lot of money. So in today's capital markets in crypto, a few hundred million is not even like rare, right? A lot of people are raising a lot of money, so it's not necessarily having to do with parallelized EVM. There's just a lot of money sort of floating around in crypto, right? So anyway, um, so Taraxa has a asynchronous EVM because it executes asynchronously in parallel with block production. We don't have a concurrent EVM, right? In that transactions are not being processed in parallel. So we actually spent a very long time talking about this. I wrote a really long thread on Twitter to cover this, and we actually talked about this extensively in a previous AMA. I won't go through all the details, but we implemented a prototype of a concurrent EVM back in 2018. And the reason why we abandoned it was because it was not generalizable, right? Because the entire crypto world is not parallelized, it's not concurrent. And if you build your own little concurrent VM, that just means that nothing else will be compatible with you. And the concurrency on these VMs are what are called optimistic concurrency, which means that you don't really know ahead of time whether or not processes are being run in parallel, run concurrently, are going to run into conflicts. We did a pretty thorough study of the history on Ethereum. So back in 2018, we actually took years of Ethereum history and replayed them, right, to actually investigate whether or not concurrency is worth it. And it wasn't worth it because in optimistic concurrency, if you run into conflicts between these processes, you have to roll them back and rerun them in sequence. So you actually get a performance penalty, right? Because you've done work that just goes to waste. So as time goes on, the number of conflicts within Web3, right, basically within Ethereum, has risen significantly, right? So it's just not worth it to actually do concurrent VM. Now, why are so many people funding so much, concurrency right now? Is because they're doing exactly what we thought was necessary to do. Is that you have to build specialized concurrent modules, right? So in addition to building a concurrent VM, you also have to build concurrent submodules because you can't rely on Web3 developers or developers in general are not good at writing concurrent code. They just screw things up, right? Concurrency is very, very difficult to get right. So the best thing to do is build pre-compiled concurrent modules. And if you're building pre-compiled concurrent modules, those are not generalized, right? They have to do a specific thing. And back in 2018, it wasn't really sure what that specific thing was. Like what application or use case was so big that you would dedicate lots of time and resources to build specialized concurrent modules. So today, I think what most people are doing is that they're building concurrent modules for trading, right? Basically, online decentralized exchanges, whether they're order books or bounding curves or a mixture of the two. But still, the problem is that basically all of Web3 is not concurrent. So they have to rebuild everything. So they have to rebuild every single thing that exists in Web3 because nothing is concurrent. Now, maybe that's the reason why they're raising so much money. I'm not really sure. So that's it's a pretty daunting task. They just have to do it everything on their own. There aren't a lot of people out there that are able to write really solid, bug-free, concurrent code. It's very, 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 very difficult. So they have to hire really specialized people, and pay them a lot of money and do it for a very long time because they have to recreate the entire Web3 ecosystem. So this wasn't something that we wanted to do, obviously, because we're a small team. We didn't have those resources, and we feel like it's still many years off from being adopted in this massive way. So if someone's running a concurrent VM right now, they can run whatever they want, right? They can run like normal Web3 programs or whatever. But in order to really get that performance boost, they have to rewrite everything, literally everything. And also not everything can be built concurrently, right? There are certain use cases and applications that have inherent conflicts built in. They they have to build so much. I mean, they have to. I don't even know if they're still Solidity compatible because you have to, in order to build these modules, you also have to build very low level data structures that are designed to be concurrent, right? I mean, just like the thing that gets used a lot in Solidity, the map data structure, that's not a concurrent data structure. I think, as far as I know, back in 2018, there's a counter inside that map that gets hit every single time something gets created or deleted. So that's, again, that's not concurrent either. Yeah. Anyway, so there's just a lot of work that needs to be done for these truly concurrent VMs. We think that it's just too much work to see too little gain, right, for us. So that's why we didn't end up doing it. We ended up trying to do something which is generalized speedups, right, which is natively integrating the EVM into a high throughput network. In our case, block that, right, and we think we succeeded quite well doing that. So our speed ups apply to everything, right? All Web3 products, the apps out there, they are all enjoying the speed up. If they move it to Taraxa, for example, they're all going to run way faster than they did before. Yeah, so that's the route that we selected. The concurrency issue, I think we could revisit that after we introduce subgraphs. Right? I think it does make sense to have a single subgraph dedicated to a concurrent VM, right? We could do that. I mean, we built one already back in 2018, so might as well use it at some later time. Yeah, but then again, someone has to build all those modules, right? It's a little tricky, yeah. And the other problem is that there's no there are no standards, right, in these concurrency modules. So it's not like, I don't know how open source these other projects are, but it's not really. It's almost guaranteed that their what they build isn't going to be compatible with what other people have built. So there are no standards there either. So there's just a lot of compatibility issues when it comes to concurrency, and you end up having to rebuild everything, and because no one else is going to do it for you, right? And honestly, very few people in the world really have the expertise to do this right. So it's not like you can just throw money at it and every single high school and college student can build it for you. That's not going to happen. So it is a daunting undertaking in general. But anyway, there's no reason why we can't have a single subgraph committed to specifically that. And maybe after our subgraphs are completed, we'll see more adoption in the concurrency standards, or that there is going to be a standard at all, right? So yeah. In Web3, the reason why composability and compatibility is so important is because it's a very large decentralized ecosystem. The idea is that anyone can build anything and it will just run. Adding these specialized modules breaks that kind of composability. Now everyone has to get on a single standard or use proprietary technology and stuff like that. It's very tricky. It's very, very tricky. So we'll see. Yeah. Anyway, that's a long-winded explanation. I just want to make sure everyone understands sort of the trade-offs that are being made in the design decisions. It's interesting. So I mean, our advisor, if you go look it up, Professor Morris Herdicke, he's one of the founding fathers of software and hardware concurrency. His papers and his research have really laid the foundations to make all modern concurrency possible. So this is actually a topic that he knows a lot about. He's like the world leading expert on it. And we learned quite a bit from him in the early days during the project when we were looking into the concurrency side of things. So, okay. Um, yeah, so there's a question about potentially integrating the aspects of the Taraxa technology with Caspa. So we've always thought about this. So again, Caspa is it's sort of like it's sort of like Bitcoin, right? In the sense that it has no natively built-in VM. So I know there's like a KRC20 project that's being launched right now. So in order to consider working integrating with something like a Caspa, I think we'll need to figure out this subgraph thing first, right? So obviously we're not some independent project that has no history and we can just build whatever we want. We have a layer one. We have all these other technology infrastructure technologies. We're not going to build like a separate independent project that has nothing to do with Taraxa. That wouldn't make sense. So we want to make sure that whatever we do is tightly integrated into the infrastructure. So it only really makes sense after we figure out subgraphs and also restaking on the subgraphs for security purposes, guarding against Sybil attacks and things like that. But because there's no native VM on Caspa, and I don't really know what the native scripting capabilities on Caspa is. I know, something like Bitcoin, they have some native scripting, very limited scripting capabilities. I don't know what kind of capabilities exist on Caspa and whether or not they can do simple asset locks and unlocks, for example. I think that would be critical for a lot of the things that we want to do. But if you have no native VM, then then everything, all kinds of off-chain execution layers are going to end up looking something like inscriptions. So inscriptions are just basically writing some metadata into the common section of these UTXOs, right? That happen on proof of work chains, and because there's really nothing else you can do, right? There's no logic, there's no complex logic that allows you to do anything else. So all you're really doing is just inscriptions. So even if we later on build an execution layer, it's probably just going to be inscriptions too, because again, there's no native execution, right? But there needs to be that needs to be thought out like very carefully. How would that would be secure? I think there are people that actually built things like that before, very early on, like serious researchers that have done research into this. How do you build essentially an off-chain execution layer to something like Bitcoin? So I think there's quite a bit of research done on that, mostly from the security side of things. So anyway, it's something that I think is on the very long-term roadmap for us. So let's figure out subgraphs, and let's look into how that will work with Caspa. I think that the thing that makes Caspa really interesting is that if they're able to if they're and again, I guess I apologize for not understanding Caspa's scripting language. And but if they're able to support locks and unlocks, I think would be interesting to actually leverage the liquidity that actually exists on the Caspa network, right? I think that's a huge trove of underutilized assets right now. All the things that you can do in modern staking, if you're able to mirror that onto a off Caspa execution layer, I think that could be very, very interesting. But anyway, it's on the longer term roadmap. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Let's finish the stuff that we're going to be doing, such as subgraphs first, and then figure out other things. Um, okay, so there was a question about other comparisons versus all these other layer ones, and about the future of block DAG. So okay, so I think so the vast majority of layer ones today in the market are obviously single chains, right? So they're blockchain, one block after another, and uh, a DAG, right? I mean, a block DAG or a DAG structure. It's when we say just a fundamental upgrade from blockchain. That's not really marketing. It's just a fact. It's a mathematical fact, right? A graph is a superset, a more generalized superset of a single chain. Like a single chain is just a simplified graph, right? So that's not really, again, that's not really even marketing. It just contains more data, right? It's more parallelized. It's everything, right? It's just better. So long term, I think if the market makes sense, then the single chains will start to be replaced by a block DAG or some variations of the block DAG, right? Because, like I said, it's a fundamental, just an upgrade. It's just better. I don't see why people wouldn't want to use it. When we first started talking to a lot of other layer ones back in 2017, 2018, when we were first designing the general direction of Taraxa, I think the comments that we hear, well, I mean, the comments you hear from most layer ones is that they haven't even thought about it just because they're not really serious, right? Infrastructure builders. But from the people who are serious, I think in general they find DAG very complicated and difficult to sort of get right. And that's true. It is not trivial, right, to build something that's so complicated. But hopefully, with Caspa out there, with Taraxa out there for so many years, the industry will find it less complicated, right? So I think if market works the way it's supposed to work, and I think these single chain architectures are going to start getting replaced in the future, by some sort of DAG architecture. Yeah. So the the yeah, okay. So yeah, that question's really long. Then it goes on to ask about competition. So technology on its own commoditizes extremely fast, right? In our space in Web3, it's everything's open source, so it commoditizes even faster. Like right now, anybody can just take Taraxa's code and just like run another layer one if they want to. It's all open source, right? There's nothing preventing them from doing that, and people do that, right? So the real sort of defense, right? I wouldn't even really call it defense since everything's permissionless anyway. But longer term, true differentiation really just comes through application ecosystems. So anything can be bought by just having a lot of money, right? But it's difficult to kind of buy ecosystems once they built up enough network effect, right? So this is why I think a lot of other layer ones, although they're much faster, are finding it hard to break through Ethereum's stranglehold on DeFi, for example. And that's just because the ecosystem is too big, right? There's all the liquidity. There's all these protocols that actually play off of each other, and if you leave the Ethereum ecosystem, you're not going to be able to really do well. Most applications, they don't do that well if they leave Ethereum, right? Because Ethereum has such a strong ecosystem. Right? It's the first one, right? And so that's long term true differentiation comes from application ecosystems, how well you're able to actually build up these networking effects. And I think there's going to be, I still think there's going to be a ton of layer ones in the future, just because there's going to be highly verticalized application ecosystem. Right? There could be a layer one that does like one very specific thing, right? Like what we're working on before, in Japan, like there could be a layer one just for like vending machine rentals in Japan or something like that, right? Like it's highly specialized to that specific use case with pre-compiled modules that are super fast, and maybe it's concurrent too, whatever, right? And people wouldn't leave it just because they have everything that they need. Like the vending machine market, like in Tokyo, would not really think of going anywhere else because that specific ecosystem has everything they need. And when they go to another ecosystem, they don't have all the things they need, right? So specialized, verticalized application ecosystems are really the reason I think people will stay within any ecosystem in general. So the idea is really not to try to do the same thing. Now, I mean, capital has a way of betting on sure things, right? Unfortunately, most of the world is still very risk averse. So what you see today is people raising a lot more money, multiple 10x, 100x the money of the previous project. And what they're trying to do is that they're trying to buy the market, right? They're saying, hey, this X works, right? Which is, let's say DeFi works really well. But I wasn't the first one, so I'm just going to raise so much more money. I'm just going to buy it, right? I'm going to buy and bribe all the developers to move everything over to me and things like that. Sure, that's one way to do it, right? But it's not long-term sustainable, right? Long-term sustainability just comes from network effects. So anyway, that's a pretty long-winded explanation. How do we, Taraxa, intend to compete? Well, we need to find a one and later on a series of specialized application verticals to really differentiate our ecosystem. And this is again another reason why we're building subgraphs, because with subgraphs you can actually specialize certain infrastructure level features to really make things really convenient to better serve a lot of these verticals. I mean, when you get into, as this is especially the case when you actually get into verticals that are outside of crypto, right? I mean, that vending machine, the asset leasing, not vending machine, was for these game machines, right? Arcade machines. Uh, one of the interesting thing about that is that there's actually massive amounts of data, and much more massive. And we're only working with one medium-sized company, right? IoT data is extremely massive and very frequent. So we had to come up with all these new technologies on chain, off chain for data compression. and verification, hashing verifications. So these are all extremely domain and application specific types of technology. You wouldn't need any of this stuff if you're running a DEX. Like you just wouldn't, you just don't care, right? So these are types of things that are going to differentiate an ecosystem, and you can actually optimize them at the infrastructure level in order to make sure that you serve them really well. So we want to find these types of application, verticalized application niches to really help differentiate ourselves. So that's the long term goal. That's really long term what anyone's really hoping for. I think the vast majority of Web three is very focused on finance. We don't really have a strong interest in finance. We think that it's a lot more interesting to solve problems that are non financial related, and that market is much bigger. So yeah, let's see how things go, right? Right now, I think we are solving a lot of very interesting problems and very interesting pain points through the AI agents that we're enabling. And it's difficult to build something that at simultaneously appeals to Web3 communities or crypto communities, and is solving kind of real world problems. And this actually, why don't we talk about this now? Because there's this question later that talks about enterprise and B2B opportunities. So our project actually started out doing purely B2B because again we had no interest in finance at all. So we were doing things like IP licensing, asset leasing, smart mobility, several of these projects with extremely large companies. And the reason why we sort of abandoned that is for several reasons, right? The first reason is that Web3 crypto communities don't care about it. And the reason why they don't care about it is because it's extremely difficult to understand and interact with B2B solutions, right? If you're not in that industry, like if you're not renting out a vending machine or you're not building a car, um, or you're not licensing out billion-dollar IPs or whatever, like you have no use for these applications whatsoever. And most of the time, you can't even understand it, right? Like, why does this need to be here? You don't understand it. And all of these companies force you to sign big NDAs, which prevents you from talking about it. And so it's not very conducive. Like in crypto, everyone wants partnership announcements, right? And you have to remember this: partnerships announcements with large corporations, if they're announced, they're either done, which means it was announced after years and years of business development work as well as technical development work, or they're fake, right? Which they feel like they announced something and it doesn't really matter. So who cares who knows about it, right? They are basically showing to their own stockholders or shareholders that they're doing something interesting, uh, but at the same time they're not, right? So the vast majority of these announcements are again fake, as I'm sure you already know. And the ones that are substantive, that are actually worth something, they don't want you to talk about it, right? Because why would they tell their competitors what they're doing? They won't. So these B2B things, these enterprise level partnerships are Web3 just doesn't like them, right? You guys don't like them. Again, they're not transparent. You don't understand them. You can't interface or use them at all, right? So it's difficult to engage crypto communities with B2B solutions. It's impossible to engage crypto communities with B2B solutions. I mean, we used to hold a ton of these meetups around the world. And after these meetups, I think just we're lucky if one person out of like 100 actually understands what we're talking about. It's pretty tricky. So anyway, that's why we started pivoting into applications and use cases that are more crypto native, right? So things like Echo and Transponder and Hype and all these things, they're not financial in nature, but they do have to do with crypto and have something to do with assets and finance and token incentives and things like that. These are things that crypto communities are able to understand. So it's we're trying to very hard to bridge this gap, right, between between this. And again, we're a small team, so we have to pick a direction and bet on it. We can't bet on 10, 20 different things at the same time. We don't have the resources to do that. So I think it's an interesting compromise that we've made, and I think I'm proud of the work that we've done. And as long as we're solving actual real problems, I think we're very happy to keep doing it, right? But B2B enterprise stuff, I think, is something that I personally really want to get back to later on. Um, because again, I just really have no interest in finance whatsoever. I don't, I'm not interested in trading assets, tokens. I'm not interested in any of that stuff. I think again, the things that we were doing before are a lot more interesting and then much bigger addressable markets in the real world. So we will get to that eventually, but in the near term, we can't be building 10 things at the same time. Let's make sure that this AI platform that we've been building gets off to the right gets out to the right start. We're negotiating a lot of interesting partnerships in within the Web3 space to actually integrate with Echo, to integrate the agents on Echo. So I think we're going to have a lot of very interesting things coming forward. So let's make sure that gets off to a good start and it's growing, and then we can down the road think about other things, right? So one step at a time, right? So and I think again, the AI applications that we're enabling on top of Echo are solving problems that do resonate with crypto communities. They're open source, they're decentralized, people can talk about it, right? And people understand it, they can use it. So those are all things that make them much more engaging to crypto communities versus the B2B enterprise partnerships. So there are a lot more other things that are very nuanced about these non-crypto native use cases. I won't go into, but fundamentally, none of them really contribute to engaging a community, right? So it's tricky. I mean, this is why people like memes, right? I mean, why do people like memes? It's because there's nothing easier to understand than a meme, right? It has nothing. There's no technology. There's no ecosystem. It doesn't solve any problems. Anybody with half a brain can understand a meme, and that's why they're so popular because everyone understands it. It's very accessible. Um, so they are sort of the mainstay of crypto. I mean, look at all this DeFi infrastructure. What is all? It's all being created to what? To trade memes, basically. I mean, what else are you trading? So so that's what Web3 is, right? And we have to do something that is accessible, right? Not as accessible as memes, because well, anyone can do a meme, right? But building use cases and solving problems that are more accessible to Web3 communities. So anyway, these are interesting questions, but we've gone through iterations of this many years ago, right? So there's a reason why we're doing what we're doing right now. And we like to get back to obviously a lot of these interesting applications later, but let's make sure things like Echo, we get that up and going, and have it on the path of healthy organic growth. So okay. Um, okay, there's a lot more questions here. See, security attacks. Well, I mean, we obviously try to make sure that as much as we can that the layer one and all this other infrastructure technologies we build are secure. This is also partially why we want to take some time out to actually do a lot more testing, right? So that's something that we all feel like is necessary to do, and we want to just do a lot more of it. Again, everything in Web3 seems to happen very fast. We keep seeing messages in the community like, XYZ did this in 2 weeks. Why are you taking a year to do it? This is going back mainly for the bridge. Well, things that take 2 weeks to build aren't secure. That's just the bottom line. If you don't care about security, most people don't care about security until they care about security, right? Like you don't care until a hack happens, then you really care. So So we want to make sure that the tech we build is solid and that we're going to take out a lot more time after the bridge has been deployed to do a lot more stress testing for our for all the infrastructure that we've built over the past few years. So that's we're very serious about this kind of stuff. So we take it very seriously. So we are going to dedicate time and resources into make sure that everything is secure. Yeah. Okay. So there's a question about news media. So again, I mean, haven't been in crypto for so long, right? I don't know how long that everyone else here has been in crypto, but back in like sort of 2016, 17, 18, it was news media outlets were very important, right? Back then, there weren't really a lot of crypto media. So everyone tried to get coverage on mainstream media like Forbes or Wall Street Journal, New York Times, or whatever. So that was really important. And then they became less important, and crypto media became more important, right? So people were trying to get on CoinDesk and Cointelegraph and things like that. And then they became less important. And now what's really important are influencers, right? Everything I think it's not just in crypto. I think the entire media landscape is converging into individual creators. They are, they really are, they really actually hold true influence. So this is a real shift, and that's why we're focusing most of our time in terms of amplification. I'm trying to establish relationships with these credible, larger influencers. So that's really what you need, right? Yeah. So that's what we're focusing a lot of our time on. In any business you work on, any project you work on, you could be doing like 20 things, but really, really the thing that really counts is like one or two things, right? The 80-20 rule. The 20% of things you do have 80% of the impact, right? You got to focus on what has the most impact. So yeah, so that's something that we're very focused on, and that's something that works. It's difficult to find the right influencers. It's difficult to pitch them, right? They're like VCs. In fact, I think they're even more powerful than VCs, because even if you get money from VCs, you still need to work with influencers to really amplify your message and drive adoption in terms of awareness as well as usage. Um, yeah, so that's really the strategy. I think a lot of people still think that media gives you some sort of credibility. I personally think that media of all form has lost a lot of credibility over the past few years, and influencers are gaining more credibility. But in terms of credibility, uh, I think our team has quite a bit of credibility when we've done lectures at Stanford. We've done lectures as invited by the Japanese government to do lectures addressing over 400 officials right next to the Royal Palace in Tokyo. We've co-authored books, with ministry level officials in Japan. I mean, we have a lot of credibility, right? Our team's background, our the work that we've done before. So I don't really necessarily think that credibility is what we need. I think it's really awareness, right? And there's right now in today's media landscape, no group of people drives awareness better than influencers. So that's something that we're definitely going on. I mean, there's another pattern within the influencer market in that they kind of churn, right? So people always say projects don't last cycles. Most influencers don't last past cycles. Um, they they make a lot of influencers do really well during the bull market because everything's going up and everything they say is right because everyone says is right. And everyone's happy, and then obviously when the bear market comes, everything crashes, goes down by 99%. Suddenly all the influencers are wrong, right? Because everyone's wrong about everything. And so another pattern that we've seen is that influencers who knew in the past, in the last cycle, they just retire, after a cycle. Most of them do that. It takes it's rare for influencers to make it past multiple cycles. Um, so you actually end up with a situation in which you have to find new partners constantly, and a lot of the influencers that you see today actually they just started being influencers during the bear market, and starting 2022 or end of 2021. So it's another very interesting trend, that their lifespan is kind of limited to these cycles. So that makes it even harder, right? Because the influencers knew before are not there anymore. They're retired. They're gone. Can't even find them. So now you need to find new ones constantly, and it's tricky. It's tricky, but it's worth the effort, because they, like I said, they're much more effective at spreading awareness than any news media ever would be. Okay. So okay, we're going way over time, but there's another question about layer twos. Um, so the thing about layer twos, right, is that it's I've always thought I've written about this before, and actually Vitalik has said this before. Although I don't know what his current thinking about this is right now. But layer two is a batch processing kind of a thing. I mean, the reason why layer twos are kind of very centralized right now, or other layer twos have adopted the stance of like porting their sequencing onto another decentralized network, is that if you want your sequencer to be decentralized, you're essentially building another decentralized network, right? So at that point, why not just build a new Ethereum, right? It's this really goes back to what I said about before, is that the core competitive advantage of any ecosystem is the networking effect, right? How much participants and how many resources and how much liquidity is already in your ecosystem. If there's a lot of that in your ecosystem, then no matter how bad your technology is, you just refuse to die, right? So Ethereum, I'm not saying Ethereum has bad tech. It's the first one, right? It's the first one that actually has logic on it. So obviously, it's not going to be as good as the ones that come afterwards. But because it has such strong networking effect, people want to quote unquote build on top of Ethereum, even when they're actually doing is that they're building a separate network, right? And so if you actually build a quote unquote decentralized layer two, really what you're doing is that you're building a bridge. You're building another decentralized network with a bridge to Ethereum, right? Basically, like what we're doing. So we can act as a layer. Taraxa can be a layer two after the bridge is released, right? Just bridge over whatever asset you want and run it and bridge it back if you want to, right? Or you don't, like whatever. So so layer twos, um, they're called layer twos because of this desire to stay within Ethereum, so you get access still to all of Ethereum's resources, but and not wanting to build a separate network, right? Which is what you need to do for it to be decentralized. So this goes back to all of this stuff goes back to this idea that layer twos are very difficult to build if you want to build something that's generalized and decentralized at the same time. Um, I typically think about layer twos as application specific batch processing. I think it's incredibly difficult to build generalized layer. I don't think it's possible actually to build um, generalized layer twos and still have it be decentralized and not a separate network, right? All these layer twos right now can be converting to separate networks. They would just be like Ethereum 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And they'll just be their own networks, but then they don't have access to Ethereum's liquidity and all these ecosystems and stuff like that. So people are trying to straddle this middle ground of building something faster, but still being technically part of Ethereum, and that's creating, I think, all these problems that people are seeing. So I don't personally believe in layer two scaling just because I think, again, I think it's application specific. If you build an application, you yourself, the application builder, knows exactly how to minimize usage of the layer one, of the underlying layer one that you're trying to use, right? If you're building a D app, you would know really good well how to, how much you're using the layer one and how little you're using the layer one. And you can do your own batch processing, right? I mean, decentralized applications always have a centralized component to them. So within that centralized component, you can do some application specific logic that can help you to hit the layer one less, right? So that you use up less resources, and the performance is improved, right? Performance and costs are all improved. So that's a very application specific type of thing. Generalized layer twos just don't seem to make a lot of sense. I mean, people are failing to build them, right? Because they're just centralized sequencers right now. So I think layer twos are meant to be integrated directly into the application stack. And I don't know why at that point they're not really even called layer twos. They're just sort of like, how do you integrate batch processing into your application, which every single developer of any sort of large scale applications should really think about, right? How do you, if you just do everything on chain, it becomes prohibitively expensive. So I'm not really sure where current layer twos are gonna go. I mean, look, I mean the layer twos are trying to decentralize. They end up building separate networks, right? They just build like all these layer twos would just become their own decentralized network. And at that point, their connection with Ethereum becomes highly tenuous and kind of there's no point, right? So it's a little strange. Yeah, it's kind of like a business problem and a technical problem kind of mixing to one. So anyway, it's a good narrative, and people I guess people like it, but it didn't really make sense from day one, right? Layer two is not a new idea. None of these ideas are new, right? There was a lot of talk about it back in 2017, 2018 as well. We did heavy research into it, and that was the conclusion we came to, and it plays out exactly like we predicted. But I guess people would like the narrative, so it's a we're in a narrative-driven space, right? So future layer twos, I personally think they should just be application specific. I don't know. I don't like the idea of generalized layer twos, and I haven't seen a single implementation that's decentralized and generalized. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And at that point, you're just building another layer one, right? So okay. So I think those are all the questions we've seen, and we're kind of way over time. Let's see. There's like another. There's another. Okay, yeah, cool. All right. So thank you very much for joining our Taraxa monthly development AMA. And I hope to see you guys next month. Yeah. Talk to you later. Bye.